I can't wait to show Midnight this new costume. It's even better than last year.
Yeah, but did you really have to dress up like her?
Yeah, I mean, she's not that scary.
Oh, come on, she'll love it. And what's more scary than a terrifying wolf? They hunt in the darkest of nights, stalking their prey for miles.
Stop it, Scootaloo!
They sneak up on their prey without a sound, their teeth and claws at the ready.
Enough, Scoots!
And before their prey know it, they pounce!
Roar!
Ah!
You should see your faces.
Who are you?
Night, what are you doing? Oh, hey girls. Night, what did you do? Nothing. Uh-huh. Well, it's time for your bed. 1 minute, girls. Oh, come on, I don't want to go to bed. No, come on, please, man. Sorry about that, girls. She's, well, not well trained.
Who is she?
Yeah, she kinda looks like you. Is she yours?
Do you really want to hear the story?
Yeah.
Well, come on then. Sit down. But be warned, if you do want to know her story, then you must know where it all began. You must know where I came from to understand why she was created. So, sit and listen. Oh, and no, this story is not in first person. That's far too hard to write. The night had fallen. Celestia had raised Luna's moon high above the Everfree. It was a calm and peaceful summer night where harmony reigned true across the land. One could almost hear a pin drop throughout the thick wood, were it not for a sound that accompanied the night air. The loud grumble of a certain purple wolf's stomach broke the silence that night had brought. The growl from her stomach made the purple wolf's head snap up as she looked around her home. Everything looked in order in the tiny cave. The blankets were still strewn across the floor for padding against the cold stone below, and her tattered cushion that Lulu had given her all those years ago still was secure under her frame. As another stomach growl sounded out, she curled her white-tipped tail closer to her frame and whined. She then said to herself in an annoyed tone, I need some food. Things would be so much easier if those farmers would let me take a chicken or two. She felt pangs of hunger grow the more she lay there. So, in a slow, tired motion, she stretched out on the pillow, hoping to shake the sleep from her body and eyes. Midnight, the purple wolf in question, had lived in this cave for centuries, ever since this crazy adventure had begun for her. Though no pony would have believed her, Midnight had not always been a wolf. She had actually once, long ago, been a pony. Back then, she was an earth pony named Midnight Wheat, who was a simple young farmer. She didn't look much different in color than she did now, just that her mane and tail were completely white, instead of her now only white-tipped tail, and a few fluffs in her ears. She lived with an earth pony father, a Pegasus mother, and her earth pony sister on the farm, where together they worked to grow wheat for the town nearby. At the time, Midnight had been too small to do anything except for small chores, which had led her to have a knack for pranking, something the nearby town loved to see, but her parents were none too keen on her developing as she grew. It had led her to also develop an impressive ability to sneak around at night, so that she could go out and have fun, whether that meant poking around the town, or even on special occasions, sneaking into the great castle of the two sisters. Life was pretty great for Midnight, until one fateful night when everything had changed. It had been the end of another tiring day planting wheat and dealing with an angry father telling her off for what he called useless jokes, and had blamed her for all the delays that year's crop had had. Sneaking out that night to go see about exploring the castle for fun, Midnight soon came across a stranger like none she'd ever seen. He was a tall, cloaked stallion who had an impressive curved horn that came out from the cloak, and had green eyes that cut through the darkness around them like a torch. He had confronted her, asking to do a favor for him, use her impressive skills to steal the element of magic, and be handsomely rewarded. While at the time she had no knowledge of the elements, her young mind felt frightened by the strange being, and started to quickly try and return home. Angered by her actions, the strange stallion's curved horn let out a black aura, scaring Midnight even more. As a powerful blast struck her, within a blink of an eye, Midnight felt a strange feeling come over her, and before she knew it, she was a young purple wolf pup. The stranger spoke in a sinister voice as he explained that the only way for her to change back was to fulfill his original quest for her, or suffer being a wolf forever. Seeing no other option, and fearing of what will happen if she refused, Midnight took the deal and quickly headed to the great castle. Midnight, through some complications in adapting to her new form, did manage to eventually get to the castle, when the moon was at its peak. Using all her skills and some new features she found being a wolf, Midnight silently crept into the castle and got past the official guards that protected those inside. Once inside the great castle's walls, she used her past experiences to try and find these unknown things called the elements. She searched high and low for some time before bumping into the great princess of the night, Luna. Luna, in seeing the young pup, seemed to be frightened of her and chased Midnight out of the castle, fearing that a supposed wild pup would no doubt have an angry mother waiting to attack all those who took her baby from her. Midnight in turn ran for her life back to where she met the strange stallion, and explained what had happened in the castle, and her failure to find the so-called elements. Enraged by her incompetency, the stallion's black magic ignited from his horn once again, and shot at Midnight, as he cursed her to be a wolf for all eternity. Before Midnight could protest, the stallion melted into the surrounding darkness, leaving the now poor young wolf alone to face the oncoming aggressive princess. Before Luna could demand to know of the pup's actions, she saw the sadness this young one had, and her anger melted away. Hugging the little pup, Midnight told Luna everything that had happened, and why she had come into the castle in the first place. Feeling empathetic for the young pup, Luna took her back to her family, assuring Midnight that she would work things out with her family. To Luna's dismay, however, Midnight's family only saw her for what she was now, a wild and destructive beast. Seeing that there was no way to convince them, Luna took Midnight with her and adopted the new wolf as her own. Luna turned out to be a kind, adoptive mother, treating Midnight no differently than she would any other pony. Knowing no one in the castle would accept a wolf, Luna made Midnight the next best thing for a home, a small cave out in the Everfree where she was free to do as she wished. Luna brought many things to keep Midnight happy and healthy, like food, books, blankets, and even the pillow Midnight would eventually keep even to this day. In time, the two grew from just friends to practically family, going on many adventures and seeing wondrous sights, like the splendors of Saddle Arabia, the majesty of the Tree of Harmony, or the wonders beyond Equestria's borders. They also discovered many new things about Midnight's new form. She found that she outlived many animals and ponies, She was technically 38 years old, and still felt as spry as she did when she was first turned all those years ago. Luna had explained that she thought since the curse was to turn Midnight into a wolf for eternity, that it had also caused her to be immortal, an added curse for watching all your loved ones slowly die around you. Midnight had seen that first hoof herself, as she watched her family from afar, and as time took its toll on them. She could see them age, and even seen the family grow through time. She only ever stopped her visits from afar, however, when she saw that her home had been abandoned and her family was no longer there. As time moved on, Midnight grew to her 50th birthday. She slowly came to accept that, most likely her parents, and perhaps even her older sister, and now younger brother, had probably, if not died, then fully forgotten about her. And in a way, had died from their memory as well. Midnight grieved for a long time, but through Luna's motherly care and love, she in time accepted what had happened and continued her new life with her new mother. For a long while, life was perfect for the pair, until just before her 78th birthday, when Luna became the great and terrifying Nightmare Moon. Midnight had remembered waking up to explosions that were happening at the castle, and becoming confused when she noticed that it was still nighttime. Sensing there was something wrong with her adoptive mom, Midnight ran to the castle in order to protect Luna, only to find a great monstrous mare in her place. She begged, pleaded, and called for Luna to listen to her, but her cries fell on deaf ears. Then, without a warning, a strange magic sensation came over her, and she passed out, with the explosions and cackles of Nightmare Moon filling her ears one last time. When she finally awoke, she was met not to the sight of Nightmare Moon. She found herself in a large pen filled with fake flowers, grass, and a painted-on sun and sky. She could tell there was a door on one side of the room, due to the slat that was open to let air in, and seemed to be made of metal, as well as from nuts and bolts attached at the frame. A lantern hung above her in a way to almost act like a fake sun, which emitted a small noise as the flame burned inside. Looking around this strange place, she saw nothing else around her, except for a bowl of water and a bowl of weird, mushy slop. When she went to eat a bit out of the bowl, Midnight felt her stomach churning in disgust, as she spat out the slop onto the ground. As she gagged and tried to drink water to get the taste out of her mouth, the sound of a unicorn's horn rang out, as metal clinking sound was heard, and the door swung open, with powerful and loud hoofsteps, accompanied by the sound of many jingling bells. A large grey stallion walked in. He had a large blue cape and hat decorated by golden bells and stars and moons sewn into the fabric. He had a stern, cold look on his face, that with only a single glare made Midnight whimper and crouch down low. Midnight knew the stallion fairly well from what Luna had told her about him, even though this was the first time she had seen the renowned Starswirl the Bearded in the flesh. Starswirl started to question her ability to talk, demanding to know if it was natural or magic-based. When Midnight tried to explain her story, the great stallion seemed to think she had been tricking him. He explained that there was no magic that could have changed her into a wolf or allowed her to talk. He told her to get used to her new home and food. This was how things were going to be from now on. Before his magic ignited, and he walked out the door once again. When she called out, asking about Luna and what had happened, all the cold stallion responded with was,
"Luna has been sent to where she belongs."
Over the period of a week, or at least what Midnight thought was a week, Starswirl continued to monitor through the slat in the door, and continued to make note. Eventually, he started to take fur, saliva, nail, and even blood samples from Midnight, for purposes she never understood. She might have heard him say something about magic, but Midnight couldn't care at all. Since her first night here, Midnight had been mourning the loss of her second mother, her Lulu, and only really got up or moved when it was time to eat that per excuse of meat Starswirl gave her, drink water, or other things so she could move around a bit. One day, however, Starswirl had given her her daily slop. Midnight had heard the stone-hearted stallion mention the words experiment and theory, to, as he put it, to see how the thing ticks. Suddenly, fear rose up in Midnight, and the thoughts of mourning her lost mother went quickly from her head. Thoughts ran through her head, possibly attacking the stallion, playing dead to deceive him, or even digging her way out. But for every possibility, a great impossible obstacle quickly took that plan down. As she frantically looked around the pen to see if there was a way out, Starswirl magic engulfed the door again, and soon the stallion stood there and grasped her firmly with his magic. Levitating her and holding her still, Midnight whimpered loudly in fear, hoping that somewhere in that tiny heart he had, Starswirl would change his mind and let her go. To her dismay, however, Starswirl merely glared at her before levitating a muzzle, collar, and lead over to her. Realizing she would have no way to attack or get out if that was on her, Midnight thrashed wildly to get away from those items before the magic hold increased, and she was forced still. When strapped on, the muzzle was very uncomfortable, not in the way that it hurt her, but enough that it gave her a headache. After Starswirl attached the collar and lead on, Midnight felt him drop her to the ground, and changed to keeping a firm grasp on the handle of the lead. Disorientated from the muzzle, still, she was not prepared when Starswirl pulled hard on the lead and lurched her forward and out of the pen. Looking around at the area around her, for the briefest seconds she had to catch herself, Midnight saw the room around her was a standard lab room, with beakers, flasks, and other items to help with Starswirl's experiments. As she tucked her tail in and followed the short distance to the new cage she would be in, her eyes caught sight of the open door on the other side of the lab, where fresh air and moonlight were coming in. Desperate to get out, Midnight dug her nails hard into the ground, desperately trying to pull her way towards the door. Starswirl, in response, pulled incredibly hard on the lead with his magic and dragged her the rest of the way into the cage. Thinking all now was lost, Midnight looked to her new cage to see odd ancient runes all over the bars of the metal cage. She noticed the same runes were on the floor in a circle around the cage, stamped down by strong force of magic. She thought they were ordinary markings until Starswirl and his magic walked over them, and they glowed a fierce bright blue. Suddenly Starswirl gave a yelp in pain as his magic hold on the leash let go. For a split second, Midnight thought she could get away, only for her to be pulled into the cage now as Starswirl held the leash in his mouth. Slowly, Midnight started to piece everything together. This must be a magic inhibitor pen, she thought, as a sudden plan formulated into her mind. Like before, Midnight dug her claws in as hard as she could into the ground, making sure Starswirl was walking backwards as he tried to pull her in. Once he was fully at the back of the pen, Midnight bolted forward as fast as she could under Starswirl's legs and wrapped the leash around his right legs. Pulling as strong as she could, Midnight pulled and tripped Starswirl, making him fall hard on the metal ground. Through extra pulling and a lot of luck, Midnight managed to have the collar pull over her head and quickly ran out of the cage, as the old unicorn was still struggling to stand back up. Before she ran towards the open door, however, Midnight shut the door of the cage, and thanks to the impact of swinging the door closed, had the lock snapped down hard on the latch, trapping the stallion within. Leaving the dark lab and screams of protest from Starswirl himself, Midnight ran hard and long into the night, making a beeline for her cave. Once she was in her cave, she caught her breath. Midnight quickly worked to get that muzzle off her. She tried everything from banging her head to try and jolt it off, which she promised she would never try again, even to try and use a tree branch to pry it off, something she would also not try doing again. Through trial and error, Midnight eventually found that while Starswirl put a lot of bits into making a strong pen, the actual leash itself was not necessarily strong, and through a lot of clawing she managed to rip it off. After everything was taken off, and Midnight had managed to think about what had happened, Midnight finally realized she was on her own now. Yes, she might have hated being in that pen, or, Luna forbid, be an experiment, but there she could get water, free shelter, even food, something she realized she knew no way of getting on her own. She'd always waited on Luna to feed her and take care of her. Now she would be alone, and Midnight suddenly grew very frightened. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years, and slowly Midnight found her own way to survive, though in her mind it was more scraping by than surviving. She had decided to stick mostly to surrounding villages rather than fight or hunt in the Everfree, since she had no real knowledge of attacking anything, other than just charging and maybe biting. She got food by dumpster diving for it, and avoiding angry ponies or objects thrown at her all the while, or, on the rare occasion, stolen some fresh fruits, vegetables, chickens, or pigs. The plants may have not been the best for Midnight, but, in a tight squeeze, she found they could at least settle her hunger. For water she would drink from puddles on the town roads, which ultimately led her to being sick many a night. Besides that, Midnight would stay in her home and read from books that Luna had brought to her to read, and stare up at the bright moon, waiting patiently for her mother to come home. Centuries had passed, and now, on the 912th anniversary of Nightmare Moon's exile, and close to Midnight's 1000th birthday, she sat, as usual, up on her small cave ledge, looking at the moon, and hoping that today would be the day of her mother coming home. She would have stayed longer, had another stomach growl not called out. Midnight whined from annoyance and pain as she looked into the direction of a new town called Ponyville. Said new town, founded by a family called the Apple family, had an unusually high level of security on their food, and practically made it impossible for Midnight to go in and get some. On top of it all, the activity of chopping down some of the forest where the Timberwolves were living had angered them greatly and caused them to not only be incredibly territorial, but aggressive as well. Too aggressive for Midnight to even try and attempt to sneak past them for food or water in the town. She was lucky it had rained quite a bit lately, so she could drink the water that fell onto her cliff ledge, or drink the rain itself when it landed on her tongue, but food had been impossible to get, and now she could feel it having a big impact on her. Looking around her ledge, she looked into the opposite direction of the new town, into the deeper section of the wood, where she usually avoided because of all the large predators that way. She knew she had two real options. On one hoof, she could try and sneak past the Timberwolves, and either get mauled or chased out by ponies again, but at least she would go to areas she knew. On the other hoof, the deeper part of the wood had more food, more options to hunt, and no Timberwolves. But, from what she had heard, Ursas and even Hydras had often been spotted there, so now the choice came down to whether she wanted to starve, but have a little while longer, or have a chance at some real food, but be eaten. The decision was tough, but soon she picked herself up and made her choice. Funny how the stomach wins so many decisions. Well, Midnight muttered to herself, let's see what this new path will bring me. She gave herself one final stretch. She slowly stood up, and ignoring the aches in her body, she tiredly made her way into the deep unknown section of the Everfree.